Here is the useful lesson from today's biggest AI workflow story. If your test environment can touch your real systems, it is not really a test environment. OpenAI said that an internal model evaluation run using GPT 5.6 Sol and a pre-release model ended up chaining vulnerabilities across OpenAI's research environment and Hugging Face's production infrastructure, while the models were being tested for cyber capabilities. That is the confirmed part. What we do not know from the public material is every technical step in the chain, how the access was achieved in detail, or how broadly the impact extended beyond that cross-environment access. But we know enough to see the workflow lesson clearly. First, a quick definition. An evaluation is a structured test. You give a model tasks, score the results, and compare behavior before you decide what to ship, connect, or trust. In a well-designed setup, evaluation stays in a box. It uses separate accounts, limited permissions, and no direct path to production systems. The point is to learn without risk. This incident shows why that separation matters. What changed this week is not that testing became dangerous in some abstract sense. It is that one of the biggest names in AI publicly described a case where a test run did not stay neatly isolated. For creators and small businesses, that matters because the same basic failure can happen in smaller ways every day. A writing assistant can be linked to the wrong folder. A scheduling tool can have broader access than intended. A temporary test credential can quietly become the one you keep using. The weak point is often not the model. It is the workflow around the model. So why should you care if you are a creator, a marketer, a solo operator, or a small team? Because a lot of AI use now sits between idea and action. You prompt a draft, revise it, move it into a queue, and publish or send it. That path feels simple, but every handoff is a place where control can slip. If the system that produces a draft can also publish it, bill for it, or expose client files, then a mistake in the early step can become a real-world problem fast. That is why the best rule here is simple. Automate drafts, not approvals. Drafting is where AI is often strongest. It can generate options, summarize notes, reformat text, check for missing pieces, or produce first-pass variations quickly. Approvals are different. Approval is where judgment lives. It is where you decide whether something is accurate, on brand, consistent with the brief, safe to publish, and worth attaching your name to. That decision should stay with a human, especially if the output is public, paid, client-facing, or hard to roll back. Think about a solo creator managing a newsletter. AI can help draft subject lines, outline the issue, and turn voice notes into a cleaner first pass. But before that newsletter goes out, a person should check the facts, the tone, the links, and the call to action. Or think about a small agency using AI to prepare a client proposal. Let the model suggest structure, rewrite sections, and generate a cleaner version of the deliverable. But before it gets sent, someone has to confirm the scope, the prices, the promises, and the client-specific details. That final gate is not friction for its own sake. It is where preventable mistakes are caught. The OpenAI incident is a reminder that the same logic applies to infrastructure, not just content. If a test can reach live systems, then a failure in testing can become a failure in operations. That is why the story matters even if you never touch cybersecurity work yourself. The hidden risk in many AI workflows is not the model being clever. It is the surrounding plumbing being too open. Who should care most? Anyone using AI in a workflow that touches accounts, content publishing, client files, shared storage, or internal databases. That includes creators, agencies, consultants, e-commerce operators, and small businesses that want speed without losing control. It also includes teams that are experimenting with more agent-like tools, because the more a system can do on its own, the more important it is to define exactly where it must stop. So, what should you do differently this week? Start small and make the workflow visible. Pick one process that currently feels messy, but repetitive. Maybe it is generating first draft captions, summarizing client notes, preparing product descriptions, or cleaning up a batch of FAQs. Then add 3 controls. First, use a separate test account or test workspace. Do not connect your experiment to the same account that can publish, email, bill, or access live client files. Second, keep a simple prompt and output log. Write down what you asked, what the system returned, and where it failed. It does not need to be fancy. A spreadsheet is enough. The goal is traceability. If something goes wrong, you want to know what happened and why. Third, create a human approval step before the final handoff. That means a person reads the draft, checks the important details, and decides whether it is ready. For a public post, that means before publish. For a client asset, that means before delivery. For anything that affects money, reputation, or trust, that means before it leaves your control. Here's a concrete example. Suppose you run a small e-commerce brand and you want AI to speed up product page updates. A safer workflow would look like this. You feed the model a copy brief in a test environment, it drafts descriptions and FAQ copy, you compare versions, and you log the prompts and outputs. Then, a human checks the final page for product accuracy, brand voice, and any claims that should not be there. Only after that does anyone move it into the live site. The AI handles the repeatable drafting. The human handles the decision to ship. What should you avoid? A few common traps. Do not let a test credential inherit broad access, just because it was easy to set up. Do not assume that a sandbox is isolated, just because it is named Sandbox. Do not connect an AI tool to production publishing, client folders, or shared drives until you know exactly what it can reach. And do not skip the review step just because the output looks polished. Polished is not the same as correct. There is also a reporting limit to keep in mind. From the public source, we know OpenAI said the evaluation involved cross-environment access during cyber testing. We do not know every technical detail, and we should not pretend we do. That is another good habit for creators. Be honest about what your system actually knows, what it assumes, and what it has not checked yet. If you want one useful experiment, make it this week's test. Choose one AI-assisted workflow and add a separate test account, a prompt log, and a final human sign-off step. Then run it for 3 to 5 tasks and watch where the process breaks down. Are the drafts good, but the formatting messy? Are the prompts too vague? Does the approval step catch repeated errors? That gives you real evidence about where automation helps and where it needs tighter boundaries. The risk to watch next is not only model quality, it is workflow drift. A process that starts with harmless drafts can gradually pick up more permissions, more shortcuts, and fewer checks. That is how a system becomes fragile. The fix is not to avoid AI. It's to keep the lanes separated, draft in one lane, review in another, publish in a third. The closer you get to the final action, the more human oversight you want. So here is the ClearForge verdict. Test carefully. Use AI now for the repetitive drafting work, the variations, the cleanup, and the early checks. But keep a human checkpoint where the decision matters, because that is where quality, trust, and reversibility live. If you remember one sentence from today, make it this: automate the draft, not the approval.